I'm Kathy Crosby, spiritual director affiliated with Ignatius House, continuing our look at women in Scripture. Years ago, when I was in parish ministry, we had a summer Bible study called Acts and Adventures, an apt title to be sure. We looked at Paul's journeys over vast terrain into unknown places, meeting heretofore unfamiliar people, customs, and ways, enduring shipwreck and imprisonment and hunger, and accompanied all along the way by companions, many of them women. In Paul's letter to Romans, we meet Phoebe in chapter 16, who was called prostatis in Greek, which means good friend, helper, leader, protector. We meet Priscilla and Aquila, fellow tent makers with Paul, who, Paul says, risked their necks for me. We meet Mary, who had begun gathering others to the way. We meet Junia and Julia, Rufus and his mother, who Paul says was like a mother to me, and so many more. Some, like Phoebe, had already been gathering others in this fledgling movement called the Way of Jesus. Others were on various points of what we would call the learning curve of this new way of being in a fractured world much like our own. Which brings us to Lydia of Thyatira in Macedonia, where Paul and Silas had been advised in a dream to visit. The encounter took place in Philippi, a major intersection of Roman highway and commercial movement. Wanting to honor the Sabbath, Paul and Silas headed for the river, because they knew that's where the women would be gathered to facilitate ritual washing. Two brief verses about Lydia tell us quite a bit about her times, and about responding to something new appearing unexpectedly in the midst of the ordinary. Lydia was a worshiper of God, we are told, but the way of Jesus would have been quite radical in its simplicity, openness, generosity, and preference for the oppressed. We can guess Lydia was a woman of means because the purple cloth that she dealt in was very dear, very expensive, and very rare. She listened eagerly, Scripture tells us, because the Lord opened her heart. She accepted God's invitation to the new with radical openness, willingness to learn, and equally radical hospitality, inviting them to her home. How might Lydia's response inform and transform us in this time of shift in so many ways? So much of what has circumscribed our lives has been called into question. Are we being invited, as Lydia was, to allow God to open our hearts to see clearly, to be willing to listen, to reserve judgment, and to offer radical hospitality, the radical hospitality of our hearts? Who might our companions on the way be? Perhaps they haven't appeared yet. Perhaps from very unexpected places. St. Ignatius tells us that if we are not ready to ask for the grace to begin something new, that we ask for the grace to accept the grace. I think that's where many of us are today. And so we look to Lydia, to Phoebe, to all our sisters early on in our Christian journey. They're there.